witnessing a lot of data, like Flo showed us. We have a lot of images online. We have a lot of data, information that people are sharing. So beyond this wave of technology that we are all using, we are witnessing a shift in the power distribution from governments to organizations. And it's all, a matter of how we use this data. How do we use it to create a better future? And for that, I invite Paul Papadimitrou on stage. He's the founder and innovation scout.
Hello. Hello.
There you go. Here's the clicker. I hope it works. At Intelligencer. And
yeah,
he's
it's
going
my company.
to talk to us about the innovation in the age of distributed power.
The advantage when you create your own company is you can call yourself whatever you want. So I can be a CEO, I can be an innovation scout, I can be whatever I want. That's already... You know what? That's the last slide of the presentation. So you might want actually to go to the first one. So while you do that, so Papadimitrou, that's Greek, right? So I'm Greek, but I was born in Switzerland. And my mother was from Finland, so I have all these things. The good thing is that as a Greek, I try not to pay my taxes. So I just, as a Swiss, I hide the money in the bank that I just, remove from the taxes. And everybody knows that in Finland, there's the Santa Claus, lives in Finland. So basically, I'm the angel investor of Santa Claus with the money that I kept from the Greek and I put in a Swiss bank. So you can thank me for Christmas. So, how the web? I'm very happy to be here. Shinjuku Station. Shinjuku Station is the largest station in the world in terms of people commuting per day. I think in this country you have, what, 20 million people, right? In Shinjuku Station, there is 4 million people every day commuting. And that was the station I was living next to when I was living in Tokyo in 2008. This is where I started actually the company that I'm talking about, that Intelligencer, my company. What I like about trains and about this station is that it encapsulates a little bit everything about what technology is today. You have platforms, of course, trains platforms, you have a lot of trains, you have people moving around, it's all layered. It is a system that is created to allow people to move from one point to another. There's a lot of layered technologies and on top of another. So that's why I love this station. And you'll see there will be a thread in my presentation that I will use, come back to that point. So technology, I'm going to talk today about technology, obviously. I'm going to talk about people, because I think that people comes first. And then what do people, we create models. So I'm going to go there. So what is the impact on society and on businesses with all these technologies that we're creating? So starting with technology. Technology, and I'm going fast, obviously it goes faster and faster. I'm not going to be a teacher and start with the Stone Age you can see on the slides here, but basically what we can see is that it's always been going faster, and especially since the creation and the invention of the transistor in the early 50s, what happened is that every single 10 decade had a new technology shift, right? We went from mainframe computers to PCs, etc., etc. I don't want to bore you with that because you know that already. But what happens here is that we are moving from one platform to another. There's a huge paradigm shift that is happening. It's going much faster. This is why on your mobile phone, because I'm going to take the example, obviously, of the mobile phone that Chris talked about earlier, this is why the mobile phone replaced all these other devices that you used to have. I mean, at least me, because I'm older than some of you guys here. So yeah, I had most of this stuff, a watch. Of course, I still have a watch, but I see that a lot of people don't. The camera, the TV, all this has been encapsulated in a single thing, which is called the mobile phone, the smartphone, whatever name, that doesn't really matter. The point here is that shows to me what I call the oven analogy. It's that there's a deflation happening. Deflation means that the price of components, the price of technology is falling rapidly, and that's why it disappears. That's hence the analogy with the oven. Do you really look at your oven when you go in your kitchen and say, wow? No, I don't, actually. I don't even look at it. You know what? I look at it twice a year. Why? Because I have to figure out how to change the clock when we spring forward, and I never can get it. So this is the thing. Technology because the price falls down, and when it falls down, it disappears. You don't see it anymore. So that's the most important thing. Processing power has accelerated, which means that also deflation, the price has gone down very fast. And if you think about it, what you have in your pocket not only has more processing power that the old Apollo program that brought us to the moon, it also, with a single thing like that, it has more processing power than the entire Allied force in 1945. And we use that to watch cat videos, you know. Anyway, of course. So deflation, that's the first driver of technology. The second driver of technology, if you look at this, is here most people see, that's not me, I'm not that well built. Most people see an iPad on a beach or on the swimming pool, as you wish. What I see is a layer of technology on top of another, is what you can do with technology, okay? So the numbers do not matter, just that if you look at the numbers on the slides, these are just the numbers of new, here, the first one is, in 2013, there were 15 million new books that were edited. And I'm going to run through the numbers, and I'm going to say them. The point is that all these books, websites, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all these things, what are they? They are platforms. They are platforms that are built upon other technology and that you can build atop another technology. This is the other driver that really matters, is platforms. And of course, the third that you already know about as well is clearly called networks. So this is the fact, you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter, and you suddenly are able to connect with the entire world extremely quickly. If you add these three things together, these are the main drivers of the innovation today. Deflation, so processing power going faster and faster, Moore's law if you want. Platforms, the fact that we build one upon another on a new technology, and then networks. We have 3 billion smartphones probably within the next 4 years. Will be 5 billion people connected on the internet probably by 2020. There will be at least 40 billion Internet of Things, or devices that talk to each other online. So all this, what does it create? Because technology is great, but I want to talk about what it does to us. It creates all nodes on a network. We're suddenly becoming all connected together in a way that was never possible before. We all nodes in a network. And this is important because in economics, we call something called network effects. I'm sure you've heard about the term network effects. Network effects means the more people are connected, the more value you get. This is why valuations for companies like Facebook, etc., are so big, because the more people you are, the more, we just heard about a community, the more people are in a community, the more valuable it is. So this is network effect. These three drivers are the drivers of technology. The thing is, we are people. We're not just technology. This was taken in Manila, another city I lived in, an emerging country. And when you are in an emerging country, you realize that suddenly technology, all the fancy, the sexy stuff about technology is not really necessary. What you want is that technology solves a problem for you. So we are people. I'm going to talk now about people, if the slide wants to go. So, because I'm Greek, I have the right to use Greek mythology, right? Yeah, I can do that. So, in Greek mythology, and again, I'm not going to do here all teaching as a professor, in discourse, there's 4 things. Logos, the science, the facts; ethos, the customs, the habits we have in a society; pathos, which is our passion; and mythos, which is the meaning. What's the meaning of life? Some people will say 42, but that's not the answer, right? But the point is here is that as a society, as people, we have facts that we need to live by, but we also have meaning, which for a very long time was obviously religion, right? So this is something that still applies to us today, but technology is changing that. One of the things is changing is obviously with the amount of information that is shared online, with the amount of knowledge that we can gather online, with the amount of people that you can actually talk to online, suddenly all these dynamics have changed. And what we've seen since the beginning of time, basically, is that the accumulation of information and knowledge, although knowledge and information are the same thing, have created a huge, huge, huge impact on logos. So we are more and more scientifically based, which is great, by the way, right? we are trusting science more and more, and we went from an era of superstition to an era of actual facts. So facts, that's a given. More and more, we are grounded in facts. That's the same happened, of course, since the creation of the transistors. I just put here, just that you know, the usual way of describing generations. I don't like it. Millennials do not exist. Stop thinking about that. The point here is that stop looking at time frames with generations. The only point that matters is the one I'm going to do next. What happens actually when you're born, what creates you is the circumstances of your birth. This is extremely important. So, and I'm just going to go, and it's going to be a little bit simplified because I cannot, otherwise I would go for hours. What happened is that for a very long time, until basically the early 90s, people were very happy about the economical situations. I know not in the Eastern Europe before 89, so please do not misquote me. That's a very Western way of seeing things. But the Western world was being very happy about its future. The same thing happened about society. We believe we lived in a great society. The only fear was a little bit, of course, a nuclear bomb, because that was the thing that made people afraid. People that were born in that era had a sense of hope. Then, of course, 89, the Berlin Wall fell. So what happened is that suddenly everything became bliss. We're suddenly starting thinking that a lot of things would be going great. Economically, we're starting to be a little bit more frail, especially here in Europe. It was great in the US, but especially here in Europe. And of course, what happened afterwards was a freaking disaster, because suddenly the economical downturn started happening, especially after 2007. And at the same time, we started having 9/11, so the fear of terrorism. And at the same point, so basically what happens is that people that are born today are the first ones that are being told, and I'm not saying that's true, are the first ones that are being told that they're not going to live a life as good as their parents. This is what impacts someone. This is what impacts how you see technology. This is how it impacts how you feel about your future. It's not the fact that you're called Generation X, Y, and by the way, we're running out of letters, but it's because we actually are born in the way of our circumstances. And this is extremely important as the way we're going to see our future. And you're going to see why it matters. The other thing that matters is that, this is the curve you're seeing here, is at exactly the same time that all these things starting happening and people were starting to be scared about the future, the world GDP share between emerging countries and developed countries shifted. So basically now, the GDP is growing for everyone. I'm not saying the opposite, but the share of the GDP now is actually more important for emerging countries than it is for the West. Of course, if you think about somebody that is born in the West, it's not only he has an economical downturn, not only he has a bad outlook about his future, and I say it's a perception, I'm not saying it's the truth, but at the same time, he's telling, oh shit, I should be in an emerging country because we're actually losing. We're being disrupted. The West is being disrupted by emerging countries. All this is happening at the exact same time. And this is what will matter in the way that innovation will be created tomorrow. And of course, we learn about it because we can actually go online and just read about it. There's also a multiplier effect because of that. What does it create? It creates people that believe differently in the way we create our own identity. First of all, it's tribal, meaning that you go online and you find people that think like you. When I was a kid, I was a little bit bullied because I was the only one in my classroom having the interest I had. And that's okay, don't worry, it was not a sad story. I'm not going to make you cry. The difference between me, 39 years ago I was born, and today is that today I could, with the same kid in the same classroom, I could have gone and find other people that think similar like me. So I could have validated my interests. So that's the tribal part. The nomadic part is that suddenly boundaries do not seem the same way. You can look at you. Who's in the startup here? Can you raise your hands? Yeah. You can live in Romania, you can live in London like me tomorrow, you can try to go to live in San Francisco. I know there are a lot of, there are visa issues, etc., but at the end of the day, that wasn't ever possible before. You can actually move are way much easier. The future is open to that. So this creates another way of thinking of your identity that is not as grounded in your country as it used to be. And the last one is singular. You can be whoever you want to be. By the way, your parents tell you that. You can be whoever you want to be. You have these possibilities. This is a new way of identifying yourself, and this is defining the people that are creating and that will create innovation tomorrow. Japan again. So we had the technology, the platforms, the networks, the fact that the deflation is happening. We have the people that are creating new identities. So what are the effects? What are the creations that are going to happen in the next few years? So what are the models we see? Because as humans, we create models, we create societies, we create nations, we create religions, we create beliefs. So what are the next models that we're going to see? And I'm going to say just 5 that are the 5 big trends. The first one, old power versus new power. You can see that in a lot of regulation fights. When we hear about Uber versus the taxi companies, this is exactly what's the impact that it is. There's an old versus new power. The way we define power is not the same way the power was defined before. That's for everything, which is what we just mentioned. Anka just mentioned the political fight here in Romania. I don't know anything about it, but you can see that the way people conceive power, the way people see power has changed dramatically. The top-down approach doesn't work anymore. The same thing, by the way, because we have an economical downturn, or at least a GDP growth, but there's no jobs, let's be honest. I come from Greece, there's 45% of youth unemployment. There's probably in the Middle East around 20% youth unemployment. So according to countries, even countries, I'm Swiss. Switzerland is one of the countries with the lowest unemployment numbers. But still, you can see there's an issue with youth unemployment. It used to be you believed that corporations would give you a job and that government will fix your life. That doesn't happen anymore. So you don't believe in the top-down approach anymore, and you create a new kind of power, which is a bottoms-up type of power. It's a distributed model of power. You can actually organize yourself online. It's still nascent. I'm not saying that tomorrow you will overthrow the government. I'm not calling for a revolution. This is not what I'm doing here. I'm saying the seeds are there to reshape the political outcome. It's a peer-to-peer model. The second part is the capital, old capital versus new capital. Capital is not only about funding, by the way, guys, but it used to be that what was most important was the price of labor. That's one type of capital. And the other capital is obviously finance, money. The new type of capital is actually IDs. If you have IDs, and you see that when you're a startup, you can upend an entire industry. The guys from WhatsApp, I know a lot of people talk about this example because it's an easy one to use. There were 50 people, and they disrupted the entire SMS industry. Just 50 people. It was not, look, labor, it was not the amount of people they had, it was not the amount of money they had, it was just the ID they had. And this is something because you have the platforms, because you have the networks, because you have the deflation, so the more processing power you can suddenly do. And this is changing the way you see capital. And so capital are IDs today. And this is why corporations, and I do work with a lot of corporations, have a hard time understanding because suddenly they're like, we pour money in, and that's not enough. But at the same time, the other problem in that, because somebody was mentioning the question earlier today, that, oh, the future can only be bright. Yeah, the future, I believe it's bright. But obviously, there will be problems. Because what I just said here is that the value of work is diminishing. Value of work means jobs. It means that what you do with your own hands, if you don't have IDs, is not as valued as it used to be. There's this creating a new class of people that have IDs. If you have an ID and you can leverage what I just mentioned in terms of technology, you are going to be the new 1%. It's nothing to do with work. Of course, you have to do hard work, but you have to have IDs. And this is where, if there's anyone from government, because a lot of people in the startup world are libertarians and hate government, but government is one key thing it can do. It can actually work on education, but that's a subject for another debate. So old capital versus new capital. Everything is about new capital more and more because it's never been as easy to put an ID to life and to scale it. And you see that every day, you as being in a startup. Old business versus new business, this is what I hinted at with corporations. So corporations have this tendency to plan. They want to plan stuff, right? Because this is how corporations work. We create a framework, processes, and validation, which is fine. But the problem is we live in a world that we just saw that goes so fast that it becomes almost impossible to plan anything. As a startup, you know that. You go and people call that you hustle, right? Because that's how you have to do. We're going in a world that is extremely complex. When you add more complexity, there's no way in hell, sorry to use that term, that you're going to be able to plan it. So the only way to do that is to actually accept uncertainty. And this is the problem I see in most corporations. This is why startups are suddenly on vogue. It's not only because they're sexy, it's not only because it's disrupting, it's also because the way of thinking things is actually changing. And by the way, if you're a startup, this is also your problem, because when your startup scales, and I see that, sometimes I see that suddenly you start thinking about planning, and then that's how you lose. Because if you start thinking about planning only, you're stuck. And the world is changing extremely, extremely fast, and it becomes more and more complex. Imagine if you have more information, that works in society as well. More information means people are more empowered, the more difficult it is to control people. That applies for government, as I said before, that applies for society, that applies for companies as well. If you have more empowered people, the less possibilities to create hierarchy, the more control, which is why, by the way, there's more and more surveillance by governments, because it's the only way they can try to grasp control. Same thing applies in companies. They have a hard time controlling. This is why, again, there's this new business, a new way of thinking of business that you guys, some of you guys, I hope are doing in your startups. You understand the power of distributed information. You understand the flows of information. You leverage these flows of information. You created adaptive systems. You keep adapting. You hustle. Again, I don't like that term personally, but I know that everybody likes it in the startup world. You hustle. And this is how, if you, instead of managing information, you process information. And that makes a huge difference. This is how you're going to be able to succeed. Sorry for that. Old consumption versus new consumption. It's not very difficult to understand. If we live in a world where we can have pretty much everything, right? I know not everyone. I've lived in emerging countries. There's still a lot of inequality. I'm just saying, you know, the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed, as William Gibson said. More and more what we're seeing is that people do not care about things anymore. We used to be defined by the fact that we had a big house, a big car, a Volvo if you had a family, and a big dog, right? These were the things that defined you as a personality. Now, this new generation, and again, I don't like that term, but this new generation, because it identifies itself differently, it has access to everything, thinks about access. You don't care about ownership as much as you used to. You care about access to an experience. This is the new way of consumption. This is why so many people talk about the sharing economy. I don't especially like, and I know I've said multiple times I don't like, because a lot of these buzzwords are a bit flawed, but the sharing economy is just that. It not only allows people, obviously, to certainly leverage assets you have, but it also allows you to have access to experience. When you take an Airbnb, if you want to have a loft in New York, you can have a loft in New York for 1 week. You don't have to buy it. If you want to show a private driver in a big limousine, you just take your iPhone or your Android, I'm not agnostic when it comes to technology, and you have it. You have access to an experience. You don't need to own it anymore. So that's for you as a consumer, but think the huge impact it has on the other side. If I'm a car maker, what happens? Less and less people are buying cars. So my cars have to be more robust, because if they're more robust, then I will have someone that, for example, a Uber driver having it, because I need to cater for that part of the people that offer the experience. Same thing with, you know, the entire hotel industry. What happens if everybody goes to Airbnb? I'm not saying, because I don't think that the hotel industry is disappearing tomorrow, but the way we consume things is changing dramatically. We want experiences. We don't need ownership anymore. Old countries versus emerging countries. You're an emerging country. I've hinted at it many times. I believe emerging countries have something that industrialized countries don't. For a very long time, industrialized countries, of course, you know, we were winning. But by the way, you know, the cars were flawed. Now I just showed you before, the shift is happening with emerging countries and frontier countries are taking a bigger importance in this world. One of the reasons is not because China is a factory, blah, blah, blah. It's because, I just mentioned the word before, robust. You are always, because you have less, it's like being in a startup. You have less means, you have less money, so you have to find ways to hack it. You have to find ways to still satisfy and make a consumer happy whilst with less resources. That forces you to think with that mindset which I just mentioned about, for instance, the sharing economy. You have to find products, offerings, systems, processes that are more robust, which are exactly what we need now as a society. So I believe that emerging countries have a very, very big advantage, actually, over legacy systems that we have in the West. In the West, the old discussion is about how we're going to deal with our debt, and how we're going to deal with our pensions, and how we're going to deal with, which are fair questions. And I'm not taking a stand here. I'm just saying we're stuck with our legacy, which is the fact with like every old corporation, for instance. And I'm not comparing countries to corporations, because otherwise I'm going to get killed. But the point is, suddenly emerging countries have a very big advantage in this world. But it's only a bit hopeful, because I think there's an opportunity for emerging countries and frontier countries to rejuvenate. And one of the problems that you have a lot of corruption. I don't know about Romania. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. There's a lot of issues that happen in emerging countries that has to be solved before only being able to leverage the advantages I just mentioned. Because I believe we are going into a more distributed world order. If you look at the countries that win, the countries that win are countries like Germany, countries like the US, countries like Switzerland. Why? Because they're not centralized. There have been countries that forever have been decentralized, and this is how they work. And I believe the more we're going there as a world order, the more distributed the order is, these are the countries that will win. The countries that understand that everything is about information flows. It's not about processes and planning. So what are the rules for this distributed power? How can you win? I mean, there will be a little bit too easy to say, but enable uncertainty, accept, but enable uncertainty, that's okay. Enable decentralization, I just said it. Simplicity, diversity, guys, I'm talking to the male audience here. Within the next 10 years, there will be 1 billion women entering the workforce. It's too late for us, guys. It's too late for us, guys. Diversity. Enable diversity now. Don't wait it. Don't just say nice words. Actually do it. Women, right? And, of course, enable flaws. And I think by the time is up, enable meaning, because that's what people are looking for. When I'm talking about experiences, when I'm talking about people thinking about experiences, they want meaning. We don't have religion anymore. Or we still do. I'm a somewhat religious person, but all the problems we have is because we don't know where we're going. Enable meaning. If you can enable meaning, whether as a startup, as a country, you are actually winning. Sorry for that. I just want to go to my last slide, which is stuck here. Yeah, I love these technologies because basically they don't fade in the background because it's still not working properly. So we're going from a world of conformity to a world of divergence. This is scary. This is why corporations, why governments have a hard time understanding it, is because we're becoming more and more accepting diversity, divergence. This is the big thing that's happening, the undercurrent of our society is we're going with a world of divergence. I started with that movie earlier about me being in Shinjuku Station. So 4 million people, and I'm there, I'm trying to change trains and learning how to work out the fact that there's 4 million people in that freaking station, right? Okay, I'm tall, so that's the thing. And I was looking at people, I was making sense how to escape, how to see, okay, there's few people here, and I was moving around, and I was trying to find ways to get quicker from one train to another. What was I doing? I was standing tall. Yeah, I know, I have an advantage, I'm already tall, but this is how you win. If you can make sense of the flaws, if you can make sense of where you're going, if you can make sense of the information flaws, then you're winning. Stand tall. Thank you very much.
Amen. That's great. I haven't seen you speak before, but it's really cool. And I do agree with the hustle. I think it is about the meaning, not about the hustling.
I think we all need these words. Sometimes I criticize them. We all need, because we need to belong. So when we are in startup world, we like to use hustling. We have to use hacking, because these are words that kind of make us belong together. And this is what I was saying. We are in a world that needs meaning, and we find other ways, and one of the ways is to use these kind of words. Yes?
Sometimes they're misinterpreted. Questions? You have to have questions.
Otherwise, I'll be hanging out anyway the whole day here. I'm sorry, because I'm flying tonight already, but anyone has a question? Anyone wants to come on stage and fight me or something?
I think it's really great how you really pinpointed the advantage that we have as an emerging country. Because I keep talking about this, like we have advantages, we know, and I've noticed this like in the smallest detail, like how people figure things out. They always find a way of figuring things out.
Exactly.
If you don't know how to use something, we will figure it out.
Yes.
Somehow, because we are trained in that mindset, we have that mindset of like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna use this no matter what, and I'm gonna solve my problem. And this is something that a lot of people are not aware of, but I have huge faith in the potential, of the people in this region more than anything.
I believe. I work mostly, my focus is mostly in emerging and frontier countries. So I'm working in South America, Southeast Asia. I currently work for a client in China. Go to Shenzhen if you can, guys. It's really crazily impressive to see. But the point is, yes, you have all the right tools, but still, you have also some of the bad habits. And the bad habits need to go for the right tools. Every country has bad habits, but you need to let go. So more transparency. Fight for a more fair government. I'm not anti-government. I'm just saying that this is what's keeping you behind, and I don't know about Romania, say you in general, because I really don't know about the situation here, is that you need to enable more transparency. Look at Finland, because they have a law on transparency. Basically, every single administrative decision, every law, everything that passes in parliament is open and free to actually, you can see it. So, guys, you know what a lobbyist is, right? I used to be one, so I know that. Thank you for smoking the movie. I used to be that guy. So exactly, I know what happens behind the scene, and I know that the real resolution of making this, and it was not as bad as the guy said, thank you for smoking, I hope so, but the resolution is to make more transparency, open.
So you think it's possible? This is why so many people went to vote this Sunday. I think it was the highest percentage of people that actually went, to vote in the elections since communism fell, because we hope that things can change and can get better, because corruption, bureaucracy, and all that transparency, what is that? Seriously. So, we do believe that things can change. How long does it take for this to change now that we have enabled the change?
It takes a very long time. The one thing is, so voting is the most important thing, obviously. But I know that you can also innovate with the help or against government sometimes. But the way to do this is, it's like when you try to work with a corporation, right? And again, I'm not comparing corporation and government, is that you can go in ideas and say, yeah, we should do this, we should be transparent. That's never going to work. So the best is to work with the small details first. So ask a government to open, for instance, the data for public transport, and then create startups that just allow you to check where's the next bus and where's the connection of simple things. Because you need to teach people in the administration that there's an upside. Because if they see that, oh, wow, yeah, it's true, people can actually, it's even easier for me to get to the bus, and the bus will be on time, or if it's not on time, I know about it before I get there. They see the value of innovation and the value, disruption is too much of a term, but so if you start with the small building blocks, and that's why it takes the time, then you teach and educate as well the administration and the government to go and help you. If you go only against it, or only go and say, oh, you're just pure bastards, it's never going to happen, you're never going to change things, honestly. You might try a revolution, but we see that in the world that is not really helping a lot.
And I think it's available also for the changing mentality of individuals. So we each have to think like, we can change this, and I can make a difference, I can change something, instead of waiting for others to do things.
And show value, that's the thing, show value. Show value to people. We're all motivated by two things, fear and hope. Love and mortality, same thing. Fear works to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, we want hope. I said, we want to belong. So if you, even guys at government, I now work with them, show the value. If you show what you can do, even if it's a small product, and again, it can be just a train map or enabled with GPS. If you can do that, then it works. Then you start a movement. This is what you want to do. You want to be starting a movement. That's why it takes a long time, but do start a movement. And start with a little bit.
Self-promo. Okay, thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, guys.
Do you have any more questions? I mean, I
I'll be around anyway.
I'm sorry.